The ELECTRA in Queen Street, Oxford, was opened in 1911 and taken over by Union in June 1931. Staff had to wear a smart uniform of green and cream, with plenty of buttons, which had to be kept clean and shining. The ELECTRA had an extension to the auditorium on the right-hand side that gave patrons an oblique view of the screen, and this curious shape played havoc with the sound system. Indeed, it was the last Oxford cinema to be equipped for talkies. Seating 1,355, it closed in 1958 to make room for a store. The MAJESTIC, Botley Road, Oxford, opened as an ice rink in 1930 and was converted into a cinema in 1933. Union took it over in June 1931. The 1,500 seats were all on one floor. The MAJESTIC was requisitioned for housing evacuees in 1940. The Palace Picture House opened in 1912. Competition from the nearby luxurious REGAL forced the closure of the Palace in 1938. It seated 709 and had been taken over by Union in 1932. The REGAL Oxford was one of the two super cinemas built in the city. Some distance from the city centre, in the suburb of Cowley, the REGAL was a luxurious theatre with a most imposing entrance hall. Robert Cromie designed the cinema, and it had 1,674 seats. The REGAL had a 5-rank Compton organ with melotone attachment. Sidney Torch gave the opening recital, but the organ was removed to the RITZ Keighley in 1938. In April 1990, the REGAL is still there, although no longer open as a cinema. Instead, it is operated as a social club. The building remains a very solid edifice, with some interesting decorative motifs in the brickwork along the exterior of the auditorium walls. A very pleasant-looking property to this day. It exemplifies the quality to the townscape in the 1930s of Union-built cinemas. The first cinema in Oxford worthy to be called a super was the RITZ in George Street. Like the REGAL, which opened a year later, the RITZ was designed by Robert Cromie. It seated 1,654 and opened in April 1936. It boasted a 3-manual 6-rank Compton organ with both grand piano and melotone attachments. The organ, with console on a lift and with an illuminated surround, was opened by Alex Taylor. The cinema was damaged by fire in March 1963, and the organ was afterwards broken down for parts. When the cinema reopened, it became the ABC, and in 1975 was converted into a triple. In April 1990, the RITZ continues to be the pre-eminent cinema in Oxford. The exterior has changed very little, apart from being renamed Cannon. Union had complete control of Oxford, and for that matter Cambridge as well. It could be that Fred Bernard went to the expense of building 2 properties in the city to deter Odeon from operating there. Odeons were announced for Oxford and Cambridge, but neither scheme came to fruition. The Oxford Super Cinema, which soon became simply the Super, opened in 1924. A 2-manual 6-rank Rutt organ, opened by Stanley Hemery, was installed in 1928. The organ was in a single chamber, and the console was not on a lift. Union took the cinema over in June 1931. In the 60s, the cinema underwent a facelift, and the seating was reduced from 1,300 to 860. The Super showed the first talkie in Oxford in January 1930. This was The Broadway Melody, and there was a supporting programme of silent films, accompanied by the full orchestra and organ. In April 1990, the super is still a single unit, known as the Canon Magdalen Street. The wall paintings are still there, although obscured by curtaining.